Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the STS-132 post-launch news conference. We're very pleased to be here today and to be joined by our panel. We'll begin with opening comments, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. I'd like to introduce Mr. Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations.
Good afternoon.
Alexei Krasnov, Chief of Piloted Programs Directorate for Roscosmos. Mike Moses, Chairman of the Pre-Launch Mission Management Team.
Good afternoon.
And Mike Leinbach, Shuttle Launch Director.
Good afternoon.
And we'll begin with Mr. Gerstenmaier.
Thanks, Mike. Again, I'd like to really thank the team here at Kennedy that just gave us a great launch today. All the work that led up to this launch was just phenomenal. The Atlantis team just did a great job of processing the vehicle out at the launch pad. If you remember, it was a little hard to get out to the launch pad, and it took several days to get out there, and then they had a pretty compressed flow once they got out on the launch pad, and we held one contingency day for multiple weeks, and it just worked out great. The team stayed focused, they just kept moving forward, and they just did a great job. And I'd also like to thank the external tank team that gave us a great external tank. We had a couple little foam losses, pretty typical to what we've seen before, nothing real significant. We had maybe one little piece before the aerodynamic sensitive time, but it looked really good. But again, the tank team many months ago and a long time ago gave us a great tank to do this, and so did the solid rocket booster team. So the folks have given us a great launch. The vehicle looks like it's in really clean shape. We're ready to go do a pretty challenging mission in front of us. The EVAs will be tough. The installation of the Russian module will be challenging, so we need to stay focused on the mission in front of us. But getting to this point, I can't thank the teams enough for all the great work they've done, and it was just a real pleasure to watch the launch today and to have the wonderful weather we had for the launch. So thank you. Alexei?
Oh, thank you, Bill. I would like to join with the words of gratitude to the whole workers who supported this launch. This is a great event. Every launch like a first time. It's every time is as a new experience, and we planned for this launch on the May 14. Thinking about, as Bill said, like a miracle that it will go exactly this day, because we pre-planned 2 months ago a Deputy Prime Minister visit to Kennedy and to JSC as well, and it worked. And it looks like that Atlantis is telling us that please use me again. I am capable, because maybe 2/3 of the launches were postponed by the weather or hardware, but the 1/3 worked exactly as planned. And today it worked exactly as planned, and it's really great. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We had a beautiful launch countdown, really clean flow, not a whole lot to talk about at all. And it ended up with that beautiful picture-perfect launch and nice blue sky out there. We talked a lot about the weather. Our RTLS and our local launch weather here really wasn't an issue. We had the weather aircraft up flying around just to make sure there were some clouds that were forming out over the ocean, and just wanted to be sure they were staying up high and out of our way, and they were. So we really didn't have to talk the local weather here much at all. Overseas, we spent a little bit of time talking about our TAL, Transatlantic Abort Landing Site weather. But at the end, we kind of knew we would be in this situation where the forecasts were showing some low ceilings and some chances of showers. But as we got closer to launch time, the observations and the forecasters were able to update those forecasts to show that for a TAL landing an hour later, we wouldn't have a problem. And so those forecasts amended to be go, and we ended up, I think, having 2 of our 3 TAL sites supporting today with a go forecast. So we didn't have to talk a lot about the TAL weather, but it was at least a tiny little bit of weather discussion. Technically, the vehicle was in perfect shape. I think we had maybe a grand total going all the way back to Su-7 start, maybe 5 things total in the problem count, hardly anything at all. We had a little bit of a discussion after the final inspection team that's out there. After we load up the external tank, we send a team out to go inspect the external tank, look for off-nominal conditions, frost, ice, anything that's funny. And they did find a stress relief crack on one of the umbilical struts. There's a horizontal strut and a vertical, or it's rather a diagonal. And this time we saw a stress release crack on one of those struts, and that's kind of an expected condition. Those struts are meant to pivot and rotate, and the foam that's sprayed on the outside of them has a strain relief, basically, that when that strut underneath pivots, the foam kind of can't quite handle it, and it does a little stress fracture. And so it just cracked, I think it was about a 7-inch long crack. We've seen that before in different locations. Hadn't seen it in this location, but so the teams had a little bit to talk about, but it was no issue. There was no worry of liberation or any kind of ice formation there, so it was a pretty easy clear from the team to document that scenario and move on. And then at the end, we had a little discussion about a pip pin, which is basically a big fancy retainer pin. If you think of it, it's a little piston with a thumb depressor. You push the little button and 2 little ball bearings roll back in. You can stick that in and you let go of the thumb and the ball bearings move into a socket and hold that pin in place. We use them to hold our payload bay cameras in place. To be honest, we use them in thousands of locations around both the payload bay, the vehicle, the ground servicing equipment. It's a quick release way to pin hardware in without having to put a wrench in a nut and turn bolts. When we were closing out the payload bay last week, we found a little ball bearing in the payload bay, and the teams went through their normal lost and found process and could not find where that part came from, and we dispositioned it as probably having come from ground equipment. The teams did the right thing. They stayed hungry and sharp all week long. They didn't just let it go at that, and they went back and dug into their drawings and discovered that the pins we used to hold the payload bay cameras in place actually have similar ball bearings to the one we found. And so we just wanted to be sure that this wasn't a problem. And the teams were doing really good at clearing it. We got right up on top of the launch countdown, and they hadn't quite been able to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, so they brought it up to the team's attention, which was definitely the right thing to do. We talked about it pretty quick and realized that the chances that this came from that location were pretty small, and the teams did some analysis to show that even if one of the balls came out of this little pip pin, the other ball would hold the thing in place, and there was not a problem. So that was really a non-issue, but we had to talk late about it, which made it seem a little bit more exciting than it probably really was. And again, it's a good example of the teams recognizing that they haven't quite closed all their paper and being willing to bring that up to us and let us talk about it and make sure we're all comfortable with the rationale we have to fly. And that worked out really good today, too. The way uphill, there were no problems whatsoever. The vehicle got on orbit. OMS 2 was good, and the crew's up there right now walking through their post-insertion checklist, configuring over from the ascent rocket over to the spaceship to go start docking with the space station. So the mission gets underway now. Tomorrow will be the inspections of the heat shield, the thermal protection system, to make sure we didn't do any damage on the way uphill during launch. Assuming that's all cleared on flight day 3, we'll dock with the space station and immediately begin the tasks of getting all the payload bay hardware transferred over to the Station 3 EVAs, the MRM module going over, and then the ICC, which is a cargo carrier that's carrying up batteries, KU band antenna, and a transfer platform for the Dexter robot up on station. Is pretty much a full plate for the crew. And then I think we're coming home on the 26th is our landing day. So congratulations to the Kennedy teams, to Angie Brewer and her flow team to get the vehicle ready, and to Mike Leinbach and his launch team for getting us in orbit. A fantastic mission.
Good. Thanks, Mike. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate Team Atlantis. They did an outstanding job of preparing the vehicle for today, and you saw how well a vehicle can perform when the work on it is done properly. The 2 issues that Mike talked about really were the only 2 things we talked about today, the crack on the ET foam and then the pip pin. Other than that, I would characterize it as an extremely clean launch countdown. It's really a testament to the folks who prepare the vehicle and the ground support equipment to get us to this point. I'd like to take you back a year or 15 months, maybe 18 months, when we were talking a lot about the manifest and could we pull off all these launches we had in front of us. You just saw that we did, and so we're very, very proud of all 3 orbiter teams and all the flight teams in Houston and Marshall Space Flight Center and Stennis Space Center and all the work that's done by everyone around the country in support of the Space Shuttle program and the ISS program. We proved that we could do it, and I'm very, very proud of everybody. The other good thing about a launch is we don't have to talk about launch scrub turnaround options anymore, so don't ask any more about those. But really, it's a great launch today. Very, very proud of the team and start of a good mission. Thanks.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll begin with questions here at Kennedy, and we have a pretty full house, so I'd like to ask you to limit it to 1 question and 1 follow-up, please, and state your name, affiliation, and to whom your question is addressed. Why don't we start over here with Jay Barbary.
Jay Barbary with NBC. Mike, the other day before the Commerce Committee, your administrator said that he had not ruled out flying Atlantis again for another mission. He was still considering it. The problem was safety between liftoff and getting into orbit. you'd have no vehicle to go get them before they get to the space station. What would it take for you guys to get Atlantis ready to go to follow Endeavour into space? You'll have it ready for, of course, the rescue. But what would you have to do to have it ready? What more would you have to do to have it ready to go? And would you be confident, both Mikes, would you be confident after today in sending up a crew on Atlantis again without a backup shuttle to pick it up?
Let's see. Yeah, so you want to talk about the processing part?
Well, see, a lot of questions there, and
Yeah.
as typical from Mr. Barbary. But from the processing perspective, we're going to process Atlantis like we always do, because it does have to be ready for the launch on need mission. So it has to be ready to go with a crew of 4. And then if it happens to turn into a mission to the space station by itself, so be it. We would do what's necessary there. We're not going to shortcut anything. We're not planning on adding anything to the turnaround. We're going to process it for the LON, and if things change, we will react to that. It's no big deal to us right now, early in the processing after she gets home, whether it's an LON mission or whether it's a mission to the space station.
So in other words, it'd be ready to go after you fly Endeavour, pretty much standing there as the rescue vehicle.
Yeah, the way the
We're gonna be
timeline
very
would work
close.
is, like you see on all of our safe haven rescue missions, the exact time depends on the station consumables, but it would be somewhere in the 90 to 120 day range that we'd have protection to be able to keep the crew up on station. For the last flight, we actually probably can go even longer than that. So Atlantis would be processed to the point where it's at least that close to launch, so that you can launch and then successfully rescue.
And if we were going to make it a real mission, we would probably want to know in June, so we could actually start doing the right planning, get things in place, make sure we got the right cargo in place. We've got a good set of cargo, we got a good understanding of where we want to go, but if we want to make it a real mission, we need to get focused on the real mission. We need to think about what unique aspects need to be there and be prepared. So the June timeframe is about the time that we kind of need to get an idea that somebody would like us to go do that, and if they provide the funding, we'd be glad to go do that.
So you're working that now, and you're working that now in headquarters. You're working the mission now, and you're trying to.
We're really doing exactly what these guys said. We're preparing it for a contingency flight, but we're prepared that if somebody asks us to make it a real flight, we can start that activity if they let us know by sometime in the June, July timeframe.
I owe you one, Mike.
Gentlemen, Greg Dobbs from HDNet Television. And don't forget, it's Mr. Grasnoff who brought this up, not Jay. So a second question about the latest thinking on an additional flight. What would be the nature, what's the latest thinking at least, about the nature of the cargo and the size of a crew on a 4th flight?
It would be a 4-person crew, would have the MPLM, would be configured pretty much in the configuration we have for the launch on need flight.
What would it carry?
An MPLM,
It would-
multi-purpose logistic module.
Right.
It would carry spare components for the space station. We've already laid that manifest out for the contingency flight, what consumables we need, what spares, what ORUs we would want. Also importantly, it could bring back some items for us, which we would like at the last moment to bring back. We'd like to fly it in the June kind of time frame next year if possible. The reason we want to do that, we have an HTV and an ATV flight that are going to fly in December and January. We have a lot of supplies on those flights. We want to then put it in the right place to benefit station. So our motivation technically would be, it gives us the best way to leave station in the best configuration we can as we move forward. Station would be fine without the flight, but if we want to try to improve it and make things better, then if somebody wants us to go do it, we could go potentially accommodate the flight.
Bobby?
Bobby Block with the Orlando Sentinel. I wanted to ask you guys if you could talk about the emotions that you had seeing the launch, knowing that this could be Atlantis' final launch. But before I get to that, I just wanted to follow on something with Bill. How much money, you said you need money to do the launch. Do you have any idea of what, because you have some additional funding, I think, to the end of the year. Do you have an idea of what you would need to be able to launch Atlantis next June if you were asked to?
We've done some estimates, and we're covered through the end of the calendar year, and then beyond that, it depends exactly when the flight sits. So I think I'd rather not give you a specific number, but you can roughly think we're on the order of about $100 million a month or so for each month. We're beyond the beginning of the calendar year. But we're still working those details. So it's probably, again, $600 to maybe $1 billion to fly in the June kind of time frame.
And could you, again, the emotional, your responses on seeing this as we're really going into the home stretch now?
These guys can.
Well, it's personally, it hasn't hit me yet that this was Atlantis and possibly the last flight. It just was another launch, and so I wrapped up in the focus and the attention on that. So probably later tonight and heading into the week, I'll probably start thinking about that. But so for right now, not a whole lot other than just normal post-launch emotion.
And I'm pretty focused on the orbit activities and the mission in front of us. These EVAs are pretty tough, especially the first EVA is very demanding. The installation of the Russian module is unique for us. It's using the docking mechanism, and it's using the Canadian arm to actually do a docking that's typically done by a proton or a docking kind of activity. So that's some unique activities for us. So at this point, I don't celebrate too much until we've really gotten through the mission and we got wheel stop, and then I can take a break and think about things. So I'm pretty focused on the orbit activities in front of us and what we got to go do.
Todd?
Halverson of Florida Today for Alexei Krasnov, Dobry Dean. I'm wondering if you could tell us what additional major components or segments the Russian Federal Space Agency intends to add on to the International Space Station after the U.S. segment is complete. I believe there's another major laboratory module, and I was wondering if there was anything else.
Yes, indeed. Since we made determination altogether, all partner agencies recently during the heads of agencies meeting in Tokyo, that we will continue on with the space station at least up to 2020, and that is a goal. And we exploring all technical issues associated with the early modules, and among those, it's first of all FGB and service module, which Russian made, and we are working on the extension of the service life on orbit for FGB and service module. And in this context, we are planning to continue on with the additional capabilities of Russian segment, which will be comprised of first of all, a launch of multi-purpose laboratory module in 2012. The target date is the end of second quarter of the year, and then with appreciation that we do have a lack of power due to the evolution of the program and the changes within the shuttle program. We scrapped the launch of the science power module, which used to be in our configuration, which was planned to provide a sufficient amount of power for Russian elements. And we arranged with our colleagues at NASA on a comparable barter process to get some power until we will deliver this additional capabilities to Russian segment. And I believe that's in time frame of 2013, 2014, we will plan to deliver such a power and research capabilities to the Russian segment, which certainly will enhance the capability of the science and utilization. Thank you.
James?
James Dean from Florida Today for Mr. Gerstenmaier. You're saying Atlantis would be ready to go if you're asked to fly that additional flight. I just wanted to understand, where's that direction ultimately coming from within the next month? Is it an administrator call or Congress or the president?
It's probably all of the above.
Good. And I know Mr. Suffredini said he would like that flight in June. Are you only looking at June as kind of the time you would fly, and that would be the last flight, or and also if it was as late as June, would it definitely be Atlantis that would fly it because it's processed pretty much ready to go, or could you possibly switch to a different vehicle?
Again, if we got requested, we'd go optimize it. I think it would probably be Atlantis. June is the technical right time from a station need standpoint. That is the most optimum time to get the right cargo to station to help us all from a partnership standpoint. If somebody told me some other month, we would go evaluate it, we'd take a look at it, and we'd see what benefits we are, and then we would trade again the cost, schedule, time, money, those kind of things versus the gain we get on station, and we work with all the folks we talked about before to make the right decision that we want to do to get the best out of Station. So as Alexi said, the important thing is we're really looking at how we can utilize Station. You know, we're going to keep Station active until 2020. We want to make sure we take optimum advantage and get the most research we can, and we're going to look at everything we do and how well it can justify in improving research or improving the science return from Station and helping our partners. So we trade and factor all those things depending on what somebody would like us to go do.
Chris?
Chris Gephardt with NASASpaceflight.com. You know, sitting here today watching the marvel that was, I keep going back to the workforce and the dedication and everything that they do here and the extremely clean nature of these vehicles. And if I'm doing my math correctly, I believe we have a new low IPR number for processing flow. So just wondering, what was Atlantis' total processing or interim problem report count from 129 to 132? And I've got a follow-up.
Yeah, we had 46, and Angie Brewer has a good, healthy competition with her other flow directors, and so she was lobbying late in the count not to get any more IPRs. No, it was another good day for us, another good flow.
Was it a record?
I think so, yeah.
The follow-up to that is there was one that I saw that was a problem with some equipment out at Edwards that got charged as an IPR to the 132 vehicle. The only question I've got there is, how can something at Edwards be an IPR for the 132 vehicle here at Kennedy?
Well, you're referring to an automatic transfer switch on the MISPLIS system out there, the microwave scanning beam landing system. And that switch was not working, and we understood why. The guys out at Dryden were going to go fix it today on first shift, their time. That was not fixed by the time we went into external tank loading. And so to track it from a vehicle configuration, not from a vehicle configuration, but from a flow perspective, we gave an IPR to the integration console just so they could tie all the loose ends together, make sure they coordinated with the folks out at Dryden and got that work done, and they did. And so that was one that could have gone either way, frankly. We decided to err on the conservative side and give it an IPR.
Okay, we'll come over to the other side of the room here.
I was going to say, just Chris,
go ahead, Mike.
the IPR is an initial problem report. So when a problem comes in, they take an IPR, and then if it turns out it's on ground equipment that has nothing to do with the vehicle, it gets dispositioned away that way. So IPR just is that initial, hey, we got something we want to track, make sure we're working it.
Okay, Mike.
Mike Schneider, Associated Press. Just to continue on the question of the mood in the firing room, did you all do anything special to commemorate the fact that this was Atlantis' last launch?
Yeah, a little bit. We have a new display on the wall of the firing room for Atlantis. We hung that last week. It's a very, very beautiful mural of some of the highlights of Atlantis' career, along with every mission patch, and that's hanging up there now. We're going to hang the other tributes to the other 4 orbiters this summer. So I'd like to take you to the firing room and show you around. It's very nice, and Atlantis was the first one to get that.
If I could ask Mr. Gerstenmaier, the extra flight aside, can you talk about how the launch schedule looks like for the rest of the year, whether you have a date in November, and just talk about the manifest for 2010?
Yeah, we're looking probably now still at September 16th for the next launch. And then the launch after that, the AMS flight, is November 27th is kind of the time frame we're looking at. We still have some challenges on the payload side. There's some large orbital replacement units that we would really like to fly in the September flight. We'll evaluate and see if they're going to be ready to make the MPLM flight in September, and that could push that date a little bit. But there'll be a change request going out to the shuttle program here fairly soon, probably this week or next week, to go look at those dates that I just described, and we'll pull all the elements to see where their hardware is, see where they're sitting. But that's our current plans for the next 2 flights.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. Let's say that Atlantis does fly another mission, STS-135. When all of those missions then are complete, is it the plan to keep one of the shuttles, Atlantis or one of the others, around just in case in the future some flight might be needed? Or are they all going to be essentially retired, dismantled, whatever?
I think our plan will be to retire them all and distribute them to where they can be displayed. The problem, again, is it's not just the vehicle itself, the orbiter. We have to have an external tank, which we have parts and pieces, but we don't have enough to actually put together an external tank. We need solid rocket motors. We stopped fabricating those. So again, it's all the pieces that would have to come together to make it essentially a spacecraft that we could go launch.
Okay, let's go Robert Perlman.
Hi, Robert Perlman from CollectSpace.com with a follow-up on that for Gerst. Earlier, museums were told that the earliest NASA might make a decision on where the orbiters were going to be this July. With the extension out to at least November for STS-134, are you still planning on July, or is there a new target for when museums might learn where the orbiters are going?
Again, I think that's probably a pretty good date. We might slip it a little bit, but I wouldn't think it would be much earlier than that kind of time frame. So it'd be the summer time frame is probably a better way of stating it than picking a particular month.
Okay, let's take a question from Clara, and then we'll go back over to the other side of the room here.
Clara Moskowitz with Space.com, and this is for Mr. Krasnov. I'm wondering if you have an estimate for the cost of the new MRM-1, and also if you could just speak on the added capability that the space station is going to have with this new room on board.
The approximate cost of the hardware itself is about $200 million, and the additional capabilities, first of all, the volume of the module is about 18 cubic meters. The total mass is 7.9 tons. It will provide additional 8 working places, so to speak. In Russian terminology, it's the terminals where we can install the associated hardware. Part of this hardware is already in a module, and partially it will be delivered later on. It also has for external payload capabilities, which will enhance for the existing capabilities on the service module. We also deliver with this module the spare for European robotic arm, which is to be launched with the MLM, multi-purpose laboratory module, in 2012. That is absolutely necessary to assure operations of European robotic arm further on, because it's in absence of space shuttle, it will be impossible to deliver such a spare due to the dimensions. It also provided for the radiator for heat heat reduction from the thermal control system for the same module, for the multi-purpose laboratory module. Therefore, it's not big. It's not big, but it's a pretty interesting module which will add the new capabilities, and we really excited to see this today's launch, very successful launch to the space station, which will deliver the module to the orbit. And on the 18th, a part of our team is planning to be in the MCC Houston to participate in the berthing process. As Bill mentioned, it's not an easy operation. It's pretty unique because the docking for the modules were made in the active mode, so to speak, and the berthing will be provided by Canadian robotic arm on the space station. Thank you.
Okay. Ken?
Hi, thank you. Ken Kramer for Spaceflight Magazine and Planetary Society. For Mr. Krasnov, I'd like to expand a little bit more about Russia's plans in the future for space exploration. Can you tell us about the upgrades you're doing to the Soyuz capsule? Will you develop a replacement, the Clipper? There's been a lot of discussion of that. Is there actually a plan? And can you tell us a little bit about your planetary missions, Phobos Grunt, and other missions to Mars? Is Phobos Grunt on time for, I believe, 2011 launch? Thank you. We are planning to upgrade for even if you're for hearing the name of Soyuz vehicle is not changing, but the vehicle itself is changing a lot from every vehicle further on, and we are planning to launch new series. So it's in the manufacturing plant. It's called 700 series Soyuz vehicle with a new command and control system upgraded, and some other systems which are different what we used to apply to those vehicles. Some tests were made with the Progress vehicles, which we already started launching in the last year. It's a 400 series for vehicle, which also for quite a change from the previous version of the cargo vehicle we used in the program. In the perspective, the key question is what we ought to do with the low Earth orbit human flight. Is there human presence on low Earth orbit, and what is the wisdom? And definitely, if the space station, I believe, has a great capacity to prove that if we shall be on a low Earth orbit, regardless, our plans for exploration. It shall be, excuse me, shall be going in parallel somehow. We are planning to explore ourselves and together with our partners on the capabilities to assemble small spacecraft on the basis of ISS, which will be capable of departing from the ISS to certain point of destination beyond low Earth orbit, which is pretty challenging and interesting idea. But it will take some time to verify and define the technology, and destination point certainly will provide quite an influence. Therefore, in our perspective, we are planning to use low Earth orbit beyond the ISS if ISS for any reason will not be operable after 2020. That's our vision for human spaceflight. And working on the new vehicle, which is a little bit similar to what Orion is or was, whatever you will use in this instance. It's a little bit similar in terms of the overall concept. But we believe that the first variant of this vehicle will be used for the low Earth orbit to test it on the ISS as a test ground. And then we are planning to upgrade it for the exploration goals, which will likely to have a modular principle of assembly. That's a small sketch of the vision for the human space flight, what we are planning. The planetary on the Phobos, it is moving unfortunately to the right due to the payload problems. Yes.
Randy Siegel, WSTU Radio. This is for either Bill or Mr. Krasnov. I understand that the KOTEV crew is going to be delayed a week in coming home. Is that beneficial, or is it going to create any problems that are there? And a follow-up would be, the station was planned for 15, not for 20. Are we going to have all the correct parts up there as spares to take us the extra 5 years or plus?
The KOTEV's crew is not actually delayed. We shifted the launch date from the 14, which was the original date of the Soyuz launch in June, to the 16th of June. And we apparently moved for the same 2 days to the right of the landing to provide for the same window. Therefore, it's no changes in the philosophy, and the KOTEV crew is scheduled to get back to Earth on the 2nd of June. And for operability, I believe Bill will add, but you see, we planned for 15 years. And it was on paper when we negotiated IGA and MOUs. That was our desire to assemble space station within 5 years. But many things provided a big impact on the development of the space station on orbit. There is a similarity what we used to have with Mir space station, where we had old modules and pretty new ones, Spectra and Priroda, which were on orbit only for 3 years. The same here. We do have fresh modules, European, Japanese. We do have old, and it's a challenge to explore how we can stretch, but on a very solid ground of justification, the service life on orbit and what is necessary. First of all, the challenge is structural. From the structural standpoint, we believe that the first modules could be proved to be operable further on. 2020 is very feasible goal. Therefore, the amount of spares, of course, it's a very right question to ask. And we will have a challenge in absence of space shuttle. We do have the same opinion, and so I understand all of you. We wish space shuttle flying on further on. It's the same level of redundancy when we altogether decided that the redundancy in the transportation mode of a crew up to space station is absolutely necessary ground to achieve safety, and that's why it was a space station freedom redesign launched for one of the reasons that to rely on the one transportation system is really risky, and Columbia actually proved that to be so, and that we sustained space station only because of redundancy in the transportation capabilities. Therefore, it will be a challenge for us, first of all, to provide these transportation capabilities and logistics. Our European colleagues they do have their own limitations to provide the necessary numbers of ATVs further on. The HTV is also a pretty expensive vehicle as well, and we will be eager to see commercial success on U.S. soil, which is being launched. That's many components which will could provide an impact on our success. Thank you.
And we've done a very detailed analysis in terms of logistics spares and what equipment we need, and I think we're good all the way through the 2020 timeframe. The big challenge will be we really want to increase the research and utilization. So the big advantage of a longer planning horizon is now we let researchers know that we're going to be in operation for an extended period of time. What kind of research could be done? What should be done with station? Can we start developing some of that research so we can get it up and actually get a good return on investments from research? So I think the basic facility, keeping things operational, is working well. We're seeing fairly low failure rates so far, actually better than some of our predictions, so that's very encouraging to us. But the challenge is going to be, can we get a very robust research plan in place that we can make sure we get the right samples up to station, return some things. We have a little bit of limited return for a while until SpaceX comes online, but then once they're online, then we can return samples. But we need to really do some thought and really get planning on the research side, and we're starting to make real big strides in that area right now.
Stefano?
Stefano Colodan with Italian State Radio and Television News. I have a question either for Mike Moses or Mike Langford. Over the past year and a half, you have been launching shuttles with the punctuality of Swiss trains. I mean, it's just almost amazing. And I was wondering what you attribute that to. And talking of amazement, aren't you a little bit amazed of your own accomplishment? I mean, just, I have to wonder.
Well,
I mean, it used to be
I'll go first.
pretty difficult to launch shuttles some time ago, and now they go up like, as I said.
They go up like clockwork, doesn't it? Yeah. No, I attribute it to two things. One, the maturity of the hardware. We understand the hardware extremely well now. We've seen most problems before, and we're able to react to them if we get them. And then the maturity of the team, processing team and the launch team and the flight teams who react to those problems and get them resolved very, very quickly. So it's a testament to the teams. It's also, indicative of a program that's been around a while. When you have a new program, you're going to encounter problems for the first time. They're typically going to take longer to solve. I think any new space flight program will encounter those types of problems. Talked to the SpaceX launch director today at length, had lunch with him, And we talked about a lot of different things, and that was one of the things we talked about. He's going to see problems for the first time, and they will react to them. They'll solve those problems, and then they'll have that in their goodie book. They'll be able to solve that same problem easier the second time if they get it. It's a nature of the business, and a mature vehicle, a mature team are going to perform better than a first-time team. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Does it amaze me? It amazes me every time we launch the space shuttle. It is an engineering marvel, and people that work on it are the best in the world. So yes, it amazes me every time we launch.
And I always caution the team is that, we're like a pro athlete that's performing at the top of their game, and it's not easy to stay at the top of your game. So I keep challenging the team to keep looking for other ways to not take for granted what's happening, because it really does take work. It takes this tremendous team that Mike talked about. I mean, without these guys really looking and questioning things as they're assembling hardware, even though they've done it several times, they still got to keep looking. Is this exactly the same way? Is there something else we ought to ask? So I keep asking the teams to just really stay focused and don't get complacent in what we're doing, because this is not easy in any stretch of the imagination, and we can get in trouble when we start taking for granted what we're doing. And it is not easy. It's a true tribute to the team, and I want this team to stay encouraged, stay focused, and keep doing all the awesome work that they've been doing.
Pete Tribuco at Astra Magazine. Sorry about that. Real quick question. With the addition of this last flight or next flight in June, I'm sure there are 4 additional astronauts and crew members who are very happy about that. Is this in any way, shape, or form going to affect the crew rotation that might be set up or might not be set up? Obviously, you're going to need different people doing different things, and obviously you want to have the most experienced EVA people out there. And is this going to in any way affect that rotation, if that's already been taken care of?
I think it's too early to tell. We haven't even been told to go do this flight, so we're all sitting here speculating, right? So we could very well only do the 2 remaining flights, and the plans that we've got in place are pretty solid. I don't think there'll be a big change, but if we get asked, we'll take a look at it. We'll make sure we do the right thing overall.
Jay?
Bill, quick follow-up. You're using the term June. Are you using June coming up to know if you're going to fly the extra mission, or are you talking about flying the extra mission in next June, June of 2011? And also for Mr. Krasnov, your agency reported this morning that in an elliptical orbit you have a piece of debris that's headed toward the space station and arrive about 11:30 Sunday morning. Can you tell us any more about that, if it's a real threat, or what's the latest that we know about it?
Okay, I can do both. It's June and June, so it's June 2010. Next month, we would like to know whether we're going to do the mission, and then ideally we would like to fly the mission in June 2011. So did I say 2010? 2010 we need to decide. 2011 is when we would fly the mission, so about a year apart, but it's June and June. And in terms of the other thing, we are tracking a piece of debris. We've alerted the teams to go do a maneuver. They've calculated 3 or 4 different maneuvers we could go do. It's a little unique with the shuttle going up to rendezvous. We need to be very careful what kind of maneuver we do. They've looked at it. I think the maneuver would be on Sunday if we determine we need to go do it. But they'll continue to track the object for several days, get a good understanding of where the object is, and if they need to make an adjustment in the station, they can do that.
Bill Harrier, the Joy FM radio in Florida. This week I've spent the last 2 days with 150 participants here invited by NASA for a NASA tweet-up. And it seems like the attitude they have is that they're kind of discouraged that we're towards the end of the manned space flight. How can we encourage those educators and mothers and fathers that are there in the tweet-up this week that there is a future in space?
Well, again, I think there's a big future in space, and it's really the space station. And when you take a look at the station and the international partners and the involvement and the activities we're going to be doing from station, that's a pretty bright future for us. So we need to look forward to that. We don't have some of the details figured out yet, but we'll get those plans together. It's definitely the future will involve international partnerships. As Alexei talked about, if we can use station to build some potential spacecraft to go different places, we can look at that internationally. There's a pretty bright future for all that stuff. And if you go look at the research, the kind of activities we're doing on station, it's not as glamorous as a launch, but some of the research has real applications to what's going on here at Earth. We know we have a spectrometer on station that's actually imaging some of the oil spill activities. The crews are making some big strides in some plant research, looking at potential geotropia to go look at new aviation fuels to see if we can find maybe a genetically modified or changed plant from the exposure to space that might actually improve the production or the amount of biofuel we get. So if you take a look at all the things we're doing on station, the things we're doing internationally, the way we're looking to go forward to get beyond low Earth orbit, this is a pretty promising time. So these missions are special. The launches are there. We're in a transition phase. It's our job now to catch that next vision, to get excited about it, to push forward, and to go do those exciting and bold things in exploration that we really want to go do. So that's the message that we've got to carry out. Don't focus on what we're losing, but focus on what we're going to be gaining and the way we're moving forward.
All right, we'll take 4 more questions. We have 2 on this side of the room and 2 on this side of the room, and then we'll call it a day. Go ahead.
Brent Houston with the Tacoma Voice in Tacoma Park, Maryland. As I recall, that the Mir space station was up in orbit for quite a long time doing research, and it's been quite a long venture here in getting the ISS. And now, as it's almost completed, and then to go just 10 more years and it's done, then you're not going to have any on-orbit space station. It's a lot of work, and the Mir was up there for such a long time. Why is it that it's just going to be 10 years and that's all you can manage, return on investment, so to speak?
And kind of the way we've laid it out is we've looked at planning to go to 2020, but then we're looking to see if we can go structurally 8 years more beyond that to 2028. So what we're trying to do is we've got this period of time to actually go prove that we can get research, use the laboratory space we have on orbit, use the new facilities that, like the Russians have brought up, and the MRM module on this flight, challenge our researchers and technologists to see what we can actually do in low Earth orbit, and then kind of base our next decision to continue beyond that 2020 time frame on what kind of research and what kind of results we can get back from station. So I look at this as a kind of a period for us to prove what we can actually do in low Earth orbit, how it can be beneficial to us, help us with engineering. We've not had a facility of this magnitude with the power capability, the data capability, the international involvement so far that we can see. So that's kind of the overall plan.
Yeah, I will add that the question is absolutely correct. That example with Mir space station is very picturesque. The Mir developed for 5-year operational lifespan on orbit, and it flew 15 years, 3 times more than originally designed. And we designed space station ISS for 15-year lifespan for each of the modules. What we are thinking about is potential continuation up to 20 or 30 even years. Up to 2028, it will be 30-year operational for lifetime. Whether we will make it, that's a challenge, and that's return on investment which you are talking about. It's absolutely correct. It's a lengthy and difficult process to assemble such a structure of such a size and capabilities. It's very expensive, and to use it up to the level and capacity until it is safe and proven to be operable. That is a goal, I believe, and we will pursue this goal, and we have the unanimous understanding of all partners on this point. Thank you.
Peter Aylward, Southern FM in Australia. My question is for Mr. Gerstenmaier. Given the unclear nature of the types of vehicles that may be coming up to the International Space Station up until the year 2020, and the fact that when the shuttle finishes flying you'll lose that very large payload capacity, is there consideration of leaving large items that go up on the shuttle anyway, like the orbital boom sensor system, leaving one of those up on the space station for perhaps use for access and inspection later on?
Yep, and we're going to do that. You're going to see on one of the upcoming flights, I don't remember which one exactly, but the boom gets left on orbit. We actually modified some area out on the outside of station to actually attach it to the outside, so the boom will get left. We've deployed control moment gyros already to station. They're sitting out on pallets already stored. So we've done exactly what you said. We've taken all the unique items that could truly fly on the shuttle. Even as Alexei said, the European robotic arm It's attached to the MRM module specifically because it can fit in the shuttle bay, and we use that. So we are truly using the unique capability of the shuttle to position all those unique items on station. So we're prepared for a long lifetime.
Chris.
Chris Gabhart again with NASASpaceflight.com. In question regarding the possible debris avoidance maneuver the station might have to do. If you do find yourselves in a situation where that has to be done, I assume it would be before Atlantis arrives on Sunday. And if so, is there a corresponding burn Atlantis would have to do to sort of keep in plane with the station, or a tweak to the NC or TI burns, or would the burn on the station just keep Atlantis on course? No problem.
We'll do the burn on station to avoid the debris. And then we calculate the actual trajectory for the burns, the burns on shuttle, and those will get calculated based on a new position of where station got moved to. So they will change from where they are planned now. They typically change anyway as we get tracking data. We see where the station's going. We see how the shuttle's doing. So we'll tweak those up as we go in. So it'll be just kind of almost standard ops. But we'll make sure that where we move station isn't so far that it can't be compensated by the shuttle rendezvous capability. So we'll maneuver just enough to avoid the debris, but still be in a good posture that the burns can be accommodated easily with the shuttle.
Jim?
Jim Siegel again, the Celebration Independent newspaper. I was particularly interested in the plans that Alexei described for some of the Russian activities through 2020 and beyond. Going beyond low Earth orbit and so on. And I wondered to what extent those plans are coordinated with the United States or with NASA, as opposed to being pretty much Russian plans and what Russia plans to do.
It's an easy and difficult question. The easy because for certainly each nation for which has for its own space program is determining the way to pursue space exploration. How much international it could be? That's a good question. And what is the successor for ISS scale project could be? We don't know. And I believe it will be an agenda for at least a partnership of the ISS to consider, because ISS provided a very good lessons learned from the operational standpoint, from the technical standpoint and technology standpoint. We believe that we believe that low Earth orbit has a right to be in our plans for human spaceflight. I cannot speak for my colleagues whether they are determined as well on this for issue, because it's not easy. It is quite a question how to combine exploration perspective, the budgetary things which will influence such initiatives, and how to combine those goals. It's a very interesting question which you raised, and I do understand that some of those issues will be discussed within the this year Space Agency Forum, which is being planned for Washington in November under the UN umbrella, and we'll see and absorb what would be said from our colleagues from different nations on this point. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to wrap it up. I wanted to pass on to you that we have a slight modification to the mission landing time. The STS-132 mission now will land at 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time on May 26th, and that change and any others will be reflected in the NASA TV schedule, which you can always find at www.nasa.gov/shuttletv. And of course, you can keep up with all the activities on our website at www.nasa.gov/shuttle, and follow the whole mission live on NASA television. So we will exit now and head back to Mission Control in Houston so you can do so. Thank you very much.